I wasn't that concerned about it because I went, well, either I'm hearing this wrong, or if it is right, then certainly, Congress will repeal this immediately. But they haven't, and not only that, they're not even talking about it. So yeah, we scotched that on day number 2.
And the other big bill out was the SOPA, the copyright bill.
Yeah, I'm a copyright holder, and I have suffered from extreme intellectual property theft, namely from people in China, and still, I would not support that bill. To me, it's much more important that the Internet remain this bastion of freedom than it is for the government to come in and start, making Internet police. I'd rather get less money and more freedom.
And you talk about on your site the medicine issue and the healthcare issue. And your plan is a threefold plan. You list them. Can you go ahead?
Well, first of all, the problem with medicine, and I was at one time married to a doctor, so I kind of know the inside scoop on this. We spend a huge proportion of our personal wealth in the last month or even the last week of life. Now, I'm not talking about death panels, but what I'm talking about is making modifications to the incentives that drive hospitals at this point. We're not going to wipe all of that aberrant or excessive spending out, but we can make a huge dent in it just by manipulating the incentives that we have for hospitals. Secondly, medical studies are driven by what's patentable instead of what's in the public interest. You can go overboard in this public interest stuff, but when it comes to the money system, which must operate in the public interest, you can't have, there's only 2 choices. The people controlling the money system are either the government in the public interest, or it devolves immediately to the banks. It's a binary choice. There's only A or B. This whole thing about, well, we're just going to have gold money and it's going to go out to the free market is complete nonsense. Can't work, never has worked, never will work, and that's why the gold bugs never have a plan for it to work, because there is no plan and there can be no plan. But medicine is one of the other ones that must operate in the public interest. These medical studies are driven by what can make big pharma the most money, not what is the most efficacious, what's the most health-driven solution to a problem. For example, magnesium is a drug that's is a substance, an element that's so incredibly cheap that no one studies it, and yet, or no one has studied it recently. Yet, if you look at older studies, it's just tremendously efficacious for all different sorts of things. But there will never be, I guarantee, in the current age, a study on the efficacy of magnesium for a wide variety of different ailments. And so, young doctors coming out of school have never heard about it. And it's terrible to run medicine this way. So we have to take a look at how do we, and I'm not talking about wiping out the patentability of drugs, but we can change the incentives and thereby tremendously change the course of medicine.
So you're saying the main reason that the healthcare medicine's so expensive is that the pharmaceuticals, they own the monopolies on these patents.
Yeah, well, they just the patentability of both big pharma for medications and even the medical techniques, the medical device makers. We have to do something to ramp that down, to make this stuff cheaper, something to drive these companies into investigational pursuits of cheap alternatives, whether I don't know exactly how to do it. I just know that it's got to be done.
And one of the other things you brought this up is that we spend so much of the cost of medicine is spent on the elderly in their last their last remaining days. So how would you reform the policy that does bring up kind of you mentioned the whole sort of the thing about the death panels, but how would you address this? Because it is, I guess you bring up kind of a moral dilemma, because then how do you decide if someone who's old per se is worthy of that cost?
Well, right now, hospitals are a big lobby. They have a big lobby in Congress, and I can guarantee you that they're not lobbying on behalf of the public interest. They are corporations. These corporations have loans to pay to banks. And so it's all driven by maximizing profits. We just have to, however we can do it, take that maximizing profit drive out of the entire hospital system. I'm not saying that we have to change all hospitals to publicly owned, but we can do a lot just by changing the incentives.
And could you give some examples of that, of how you would change the incentives?
No, I can't.
So you also have your pledge that you would, if you take office January 20th, 2013, and you can go, I guess some of the stuff is in your platform, but if you want to go over your pledge.
Basically, the so-called gold in Fort Knox. Number one, I've got to knock the pins out of this gold-backed money solution because we're rushing headlong into another major collapse. The only way the economies of the world are being shored up at all right now is through this heroin dose of hot money injections from the 5 biggest central banks in the world, and that just cannot continue. It's unsustainable, and it looks like all they're trying to do is get us through the 2012 election and probably get Mr. Obama reelected because he's given the big banks everything he's wanted, and in fact, the top 11 of his top 12 donors are all the biggest banks. So they're just trying. It's just a heroin injection to try to get us through the election, and thereafter we're going to see another big crash. Well, at that point, people are going to realize that what they've been told in the past is not working, and so they're going to start scrambling for another answer. And I believe that this whole gold-backed money thing has been set up for decades now to be the next solution, and it's not. It's a solution that's been tried and has not worked before. And so I'm just trying to create sufficient awareness so that we will have an alternative to the gold-backed money solution when the time comes.
And could you tell us how your campaign is doing and how many is there pulling out and how many different libertarian candidates are there?
Oh, well, there's always a holy host of libertarian candidates, some of them that never travel outside their state borders. But at this point, there's really only 3 major candidates still contending: Gary Johnson, Lee Wrights from Texas, and myself. And there are a few other minor candidates. There'll be 6 of us speaking in Dallas this coming weekend, but half of those are really minor candidates.
So Gary Johnson's the most famous one, and he was governor of New Mexico. What was your opinion on? Okay.
Excuse me, but the Money Masters alone had 20 million hits. My videos on YouTube are seen in 172 countries per week. So to say that Gary Johnson is the most famous, he's certainly the most famous on the political front because he was a failed Republican candidate. He actually got in 2 Republican debates. But to say that he's the most famous, even nationally, is just not the case. I have a much bigger audience than he does. I've had it for many, many years. So, but he is winning the contest and will win the nomination.
we're kind of out of time, but is there anything else you'd like to say add to our audience before we close the show?
Well, no, I'd just like to say that the solution is, number one, no more national debt, and number two, no more fractional reserve lending. Banks should only be allowed to lend money they actually have. If we implement these two solutions, we can fix all of our economic problems.
I'd like to thank you again for being on.
And if I could possibly throw in the website where your people can get my films and videos, it's billstill.com.
Thanks again. That's all we have for tonight's show, so take care, and we'll be back with you next time.
Thanks for listening. Robert Stark will return next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern U.S. Time. Visit our website at reasonradionetwork.com.